For our FOA, we will be analyzing the 5 Levels series produced by Wired Magazine's YouTube channel. 5 Levels is a YouTube series where an expert on discipline, music, biology, or others explains their field to people of 5 different intelligence levels. These people generally include a kid, a middle schooler, a college student, a graduate student, and another expert. Our goal is to demonstrate how and why language used in each of these levels are distinct from each other. In order to achieve these goals, we watched and analyzed 2 of the 6 videos. After watching the 2, we compared them and noticed how language was used per level, per video, as well as picking up on notable trends. The first thing we noticed was that the time spent per level varied greatly. For all the videos, the least amount of time was spent on the level 1 discussion, the next least with the level 2, and so on until level 5, where the most video time was spent. Logically, this makes sense, as it would be harder to converse with those who possess less knowledge on a subject. However, what was more interesting was the language used in each video with each level of knowledge. In addition, we noticed that the professionals seemed to assume some level of knowledge with each person. What we noticed was that when conversing with the youngest people, or level 1, the professionals used simplistic language, easy for the kids to understand. They made the explanations straightforward yet educational, allowing the kids to at the very least grasp a basic understanding of the concept. They didn't use any complex terminology, instead choosing to explain common words and phrases in a watered-down form. This allowed the kids to understand what was being said, as the language used catered towards their understanding of the subject. Obviously, the professionals assumed that the level 1 people had the least knowledge of the 5 levels, as this group often consisted of young children. Take Dr. Bobby Kasturi's explanation of the connectome to 5-year-old Daniel.
And so what the connectome is we'd like to know where every cell in your brain is and how it talks to every other cell in your brain.
He describes his field as how cells talk to each other and that there are way more cells in the brain. He assumes that, as a 5-year-old, Daniel has little to no knowledge of the brain, much less neurology, and as a result, focuses more on the foundation of neurology. His goal isn't to discuss the ethics or future of neurology, as he does later. His main goal is to simply convey what neurology is. When he talks to 13-year-old Jabez, however, Dr. Kasturi goes more in depth into explaining the connectome, describing how the wires connect the cells to each other and how it communicates feelings. With Jabez, he delves into how feelings play into neurology, something he wasn't able to do with Daniel. As Jabez is a teenager, Kasturi assumes he has more knowledge on the brain. As an emotionally cognizant person, the former is able to have deeper discussions with the latter. With college student Elena, a science major, he takes on a more reserved tone. Here, he is assuming that she has a stronger grasp of neurology. He lets her explain her understanding of neurology. As she explains her own understanding of neurology, Kasturi describes how neurons function, comparing it to binary with human emotion.
A neuron either fires or it doesn't fire. So that's either 1 or a 0. And it's the combination of those 1s or 0s that actually produce the 10,000 different answers that you say.
As seen in the clip, Kasturi analyzes and responds to the assumptions Elena makes. As a college student, she is able to hold a higher level discussion with Dr. Kasturi. However, her knowledge doesn't compare to that of Mala Anith, a neurology graduate student. Kasturi once again lets her explain what neurology is before posing the hypothetical question of whether or not we could stimulate the brain mapping inside a computer, and whether or not a computer could think like a person. He then proceeds to talk neurology ethics with her. Here, Kasturi rightfully assumes that Mala can participate in an engaging discussion about neurology. With Russell, the expert or the level 5 person, Kasturi immediately poses that perhaps what is commonly accepted in neurology isn't sufficient. In this discussion, they reference neurology jargon such as myelination, glial cells, and connectotromics. Additionally, Kasturi and Russell hold a high-level discussion regarding memory and mapping.
If you limit the connectome to be just the wiring diagram without, more information about myelination or glial cells or
Correct.
all types of environmental features that surround, the neurons and axons, then you have an incomplete picture.
Right.
No doubt.
Sometimes when people they worry about connectomics, I think what they're actually worrying about is that it's the end of the way that we used to do neuroscience.
Something he wasn't able to do with Daniel. As Jabez is a teenager, Kasturi assumes he has more knowledge on the brain. As an emotionally cognizant person, the former is able to have deeper discussions with the latter. With college student Elena, a science major, he takes on a more reserved tone. Here, he is assuming that she has a stronger grasp of neurology. He lets her explain her understanding of neurology. As she explains her own understanding of neurology, Castori describes how neurons function, comparing it to binary with human emotion. As seen in the clip, Castori analyzes and responds to the assumptions Elena makes. As a college student, she is able to hold a higher level discussion with Dr. Castori. However, her knowledge doesn't compare to that of Mala Anith, a neurology graduate student. Castori once again lets her explain what neurology is before posing the hypothetical question of whether or not we could stimulate the brain mapping inside a computer, and whether or not a computer could think like a person. He then proceeds to talk neurology ethics with her. Here, Castori rightfully assumes that Mala can participate in an engaging discussion about neurology. With Russell, the expert or the level 5 person, Castori immediately poses that perhaps what is commonly accepted in neurology is insufficient. In this discussion, they reference neurology jargon such as myelination, glial cells, and connectotromics. Additionally, Castori and Russell hold a high-level discussion regarding memory and mapping. This is the most intriguing discussion of the five, as two experts in their field discuss ethics, the future of neurology, and its current state. They pose intriguing questions to each other, manipulating simple language that creates a higher level of discussion. Overall, it seems that Dr. Castori's language remained the same, choosing rather to change the tone he used. Of course, he didn't use the same words with Daniel as he did with Russell, but the noticeable difference among the five levels was the tone he used to talk about neurology. With Daniel and Jabez, he was energetic, as his primary goal was to simply explain what neurology was. With Elena, Mala, and Russell, he was much more serious, as the three had knowledge about his field. This implies that Dr. Castori assumed levels of knowledge per individual, explaining why he was able to hold more complex discussions as the levels increased. Neurology is an extremely difficult subject to understand, and there is only so much to be discussed at certain levels. In letting the higher levels speak first, Castori assumed that they were knowledgeable about their field, and as a result, was able to talk about neurology in relation to other fields such as memory and ethics.
Jacob Collier, who is a musician and producer, takes on a similar approach when teaching the concept of harmony to each person in the five levels. When Collier speaks to the child in level 1, he first addresses him by asking what his understanding of harmony is. By doing this, Collier is able to better understand how much knowledge and background the kid has in the subject. This is very similar to the technique Dr. Castori used. However, Collier started using this technique much earlier than Castori. After the kid responds with his own understanding of what harmony is in music, Collier uses the word cool and goes on to explain the concept in a rather interesting manner.
People sing together and it sounds nice.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. Have you ever heard a song called Amazing Grace?
No.
It's a good one. The melody on its own just goes dum dum da da dum da. That melody on its own is kind of lonely, right? And no one really knows how it feels. So which one did you prefer?
The second one.
Awesome. And why did you prefer that one?
Because it sounds better.
Yeah, oh, that's great. I can decide how I want this melody to feel, and the more notes there are, the more exciting it is. That's what musical harmony is.
When Collier explains the concept of harmony to the kid, he first plays a melody of the song Amazing Grace on the piano using only one set of notes. Collier then describes the melody as if it was a person. He describes the melody as a lonely, which the child would most likely associate with a sad feeling and bad connotation. Collier then provides a stark contrast by playing the melody while using two sets of notes and both hands. When asked, the kid believes that the second melody sounds better, and Collier explains that the song sounds better or more exciting when there are more notes, alluding to the overarching concept of harmony. In the end, Collier is limited in his explanation when he realizes that the kid only has a basic understanding of what music is and only can associate feelings with music. Therefore, the kid only can make generalizations about music, deeming it as either good or bad. When Collier explains harmony to the teen in level 2, he explains it similarly to how he did with the kid in level 1. Collier uses the concept of emotion and harmony again, however utilizes more formal terms such as triad, major chords, and minor chords. Collier describes the song Amazing Grace as a narrative in which the major chords sound good and the minor chords sound bad. Associating with them with a general emotion and classifying the collection of notes, which wasn't defined in level 1. In level 3, with the college student, Collier does much or less the same as he did with level 2. However, Collier describes the harmonies by identifying the actual chords he's using, while the college student follows along on the guitar to better understand the concept. Collier also assumes that the college student's level of knowledge after asking him a question about the circle of fifths. It seems that Collier also goes into a more serious and teaching tone after realizing that the college student has a much better understanding of harmony than the previous 2 levels had.
So it's F major 7, but it's over A. Which is F7 over A. B flat major 7 with an A and a G in it. F major 7 with an E and a D and a G in it. D minor 7 with the G in it. C sus. Oh, minor, nice. B flat major. G7, F sharp major 7. Home. Yeah. I like that. So what harmony does is just gives us even more tools to tell those stories.
Piano's perspective is right, but that he also has a separate view on the concept by describing the overlying and underlying tones as a tree where the overlying tones are the branches and the underlying tones are the roots of the tree. With the more well-known and experienced pianist, Collier has the most meaningful and deep conversation, and almost acts as a student to the more well-known pianist when he shares his experience and thoughts. While Collier may have the same amount of knowledge as the more well-known pianist, Collier still has less experience to learn from and listens. Still has less experience to learn from and listens for the first time in the whole video.
And so I thought, what do you mean by that?
So you thought he said butter?
Butter, no.
And he said
right.
bottom, but you thought he said butter?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I started thinking, okay, what could butter be? What is butter? Then I started thinking, what are the obvious notes, for example, in a chord? The obvious notes are the 3rd and the 7th. So I said, oh, maybe if I leave those out. It changed everything for me from that moment on.
Yeah.
I got more applause for that solo than I did the whole week.
Still has less experience to learn from and listens for the first time in the whole video. To conclude, we noticed as the intelligence levels increased, a greater portion of the video was spent on the discussion. In addition, both Casturi and Collier spoke in each conversations with different tones, carrying a more serious tone with the older people. Also, the 2 assumed certain intelligence levels for each discussion, leading to a shift in the mood of the discussion. With the higher levels, Casturi and Collier assumed higher intelligence and was able to both to hold higher level discussions as a result. Overall, the analysis of the videos revealed interesting human tendencies relating language and were fascinating to interpret.